and gentlemen, welcome to the NEDG Born Vice Presidential Debate 2018.
Hello and welcome to the 2018 Vice Presidential Debate organized by Nigeria Elections Debate Group and the Broadcasting Organizations of Nigeria, supported by its partners, Civil Society Election Situation Room and Ward C. We are live in Abuja, the nation's capital. Tonight, 5 candidates selected through an impartial and transparent multi-layer survey and a number of selection criteria alongside an online poll. It's about 60 days to the 2019 presidential election in Nigeria. But before then, a debate is necessary to promote civil discourse and provide a platform for these candidates to articulate their positions on public policy, as well as intimating the people on their style of leadership and problem-solving abilities. Tonight, we will be engaging the vice presidential candidates whose personalities, when elected into office, amongst other things, to advise the president and superintend the Economic Council. This debate is a simulcast, running on many platforms across the globe and on born member stations. There are set rules and guidelines for the debate. The candidates are aware and have agreed to those guidelines. This 2.5-hour debate is divided into segments: fitness for office, economic policies and direction, governance, security and social development, as well as the economy. Before we get into the flow of the debate proper, let me invite to the stage the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Election Debates Group, Mr. Eji Emesiri, for his opening address.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2019 Presidential Elections Debate, together by the Nigerian Elections Debate Group and broadcasting organizations of Nigeria. I am Eddie Emesiri, the Executive Secretary of the group. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this event. It is another history-making event in the politics of our nation. As we know, we're at a critical stage in our history where we are faced with a series of decisions, one of which is to elect a credible president that will lead this nation, which is the most populous nation in Africa, for 4 years. It is an opportunity to see how the tremendous opportunities will be brought up. Africa is looking up to this giant to push upward and forward. And the world is also waiting for us to excel. How we do that is now left to us. Tonight, we bring on stage those who are seeking to be vice president in a debate that will put to test the understanding and the abilities to act as president, lead the economic team, and assist the #1 person to steer the affairs of this great nation to greater 4 years. The selection of these 5 parties that will be represented here tonight is perhaps one of the most difficult tasks the debate board and the committee who sat on the selection committee have faced in years. But it is done carefully, fairly, and in the most credible manner using multi-layered system. It is scientific and a series of other globally accepted standards. The debate tonight is about issues, ones that will shape the future of this great nation in the years to come. I do hope as you watch tonight, from wherever you may be in the country today and around the world, in your minds, the love and passion for Nigeria will grow more. And you will make the right decisions at the polls next year. On behalf of my colleagues, welcome to the 2019 presidential elections.
Let's also welcome the convener of the Civil Society Situation Room, an umbrella body for most of Nigeria's civil society organizations who are also supporters of this debate, Mr. Clement Nwankwo.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, welcome. We are delighted to be supporting this debate because we think it's important for citizens to understand those who are seeking their mandate, those who are seeking their vote. The importance of citizens being able to make a decision regarding who governs them is the ultimate goal of democracy. This country has practiced democracy since 1999. We demand increased democracy, which means that those who are seeking our mandate should only be able to govern us because they have earned our votes. And that's why we're especially delighted as this debate is happening this evening. It's an opportunity for citizens to understand those who are seeking their mandates, what it is they seek to do for the citizens, for the country, to lift us up from where we are to greater heights. This country has incredible potentials. We have incredible human resources, and we believe that those who are seeking to rule us, to govern this country, should be a manifestation of the deep levels of incredible resource, human resource that this country has. Nigerians are listening, and we're hoping that the vote of Nigerians only will be what determines who governs us. Thank you so much.
Let me state at this point that none of the candidates who are appearing here today or their party members have seen any of the questions we are going to be asking them. The audience here in this auditorium has also agreed to remain silent. No cheering, no jeering. That way, this debate will achieve its purpose. But the exception to that rule is now as I introduce the candidates in alphabetical order using their party acronyms. The candidate of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, ACPN, Ganiyu Galadima. The candidate of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Yemi Osinbajo. The candidate of the Alliance for New Nigeria, ANN, Khadija Abdullahi Iya. The candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Peter Obi. And the candidate of the Young Progressives Party, YPP, Umar Gesso. Now that we have the full complement of all the candidates, could we please rise for the national anthem? Thank you. This debate is streamed on all our online platforms. You can join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag 2019debate. Hashtag 2019debate. All right, I've just a while ago been handed the questions. You can see the candidates sealed. None of you have seen them. None of your party members have seen any of these questions. So we shall proceed to open the envelope. And we shall begin the debate. First, we need each of the candidates to have an opening statement of 3 minutes each. And we begin with the candidate of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, ACPN. The 3 minutes begins now.
Fellow candidates, the moderator, distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to give glory to God for giving us the opportunity to be here today. And my sincere gratitude also goes to the NEDG for giving us the opportunity to speak to Nigerians. This is not the first opportunity of my party to face Nigerians in a presidential contest. In 2015, we participated equally in NEDG debate for presidential candidates, even though then I was a presidential candidate. But between 2015 and now, I think we have recorded little or no improvement in governance, and the life of people is becoming the worse for it, making Nigeria to be tagged the capital of poverty in the world, which is very disheartening. So I want to say that we cannot continue to do the same thing the same way and be expecting different results. There is need for Nigerians to look at the candidates and their manifestos before they can cast their vote. Nigerians are the worst for it, and the GDP of the country is becoming lower and lower, becoming lower and lower. The bane of this is that unemployment is becoming higher and higher, and this is because of the wrong policy of the government. In 2015, what we were told by the APC was that the subsidy was a fraud. As it is today, the Nigerian government is subsidizing petroleum product, PMS, to the tune of 2 billion naira daily. 2 billion naira daily. If you calculate 2 billion naira, approximately 2 billion naira daily times 30 days, it's too staggering. That is to say that we are subsidizing inefficiency. We are subsidizing the rich. And funds that are hitherto are supposed to go into development, into infrastructure, and to build other sectors of the economy are being frittered away. Is the reason why in 2019?
Thank you very much. It's now the turn of the candidate of the Alliance for New Nigeria, AAN, Khadija Abdullahi Iyan.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, fellow candidates. My name is Khadija Abdullahi Iyan. I am a nation builder, a lawyer, and a social entrepreneur. I was born 44 years ago into the family of Elijah Audu Kwengila. I was born in Kaduna, grew up in Lagos, and came back to the north. I studied law from the University of Abuja and had my master's degree from the University of Jos. I gained my experiences from the legal practice, banking and finance, and media. I founded SI Magazine Limited, which is focused on humanitarian journalism and social development. Before SI Magazine in 2006, I founded an NGO called Beyond Mentors Community Care Initiative, which is devoted to women and children, promoting women empowerment policies, encouraging literacy at the grassroots, and cultivating the spirit of patriotism. I am passionate about women, particularly passionate about the plight of children. That's why most of my programs are focused and targeted at the children and youth. I believe that we should all be concerned about the plight of children in Nigeria. And that is basically securing our future, the future of our children, our future. I am vying for the office of Vice President of Nigeria because I am concerned about every one of the over 2.1 million children in the Northeast and the IDP camps, which are scattered across Nigeria. I am also concerned about the 13 million children who are out of school. I am, as a wife and a mother of 7, I am committed to using every resource of authority at my disposal to ensure that every child, every young person, every mother, and every father gets the opportunities that they deserve in their pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping within your time frame. The candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, your opening statement.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Good evening, fellow candidates. I'll just go straight to where we're at as a government, beginning with our journey in infrastructure. Today, we have begun perhaps one of the largest infrastructure projects in the history of our country. We're building railways between Lagos and Kano. That medium gauge railway, we'll expect that the first phase of it, that's the Lagos-Ibadan part of it, will be ready in January. At the same time, we've done the Alajawari. All we're left with is supplying feedstock to it. Kano-Maradi rail, which is one of the oldest commercial routes in the country, that has just been given. And the KfW, the German bank, is sponsoring that railway, the Kano-Maradi rail. We're also looking at the Lagos-Calabar rail. And these are some of just the rail routes. In every state of Nigeria today, we have a major road project. practically 16 years after the Lagos-Ibadan expressway was abandoned. We are dealing with that today, and we're building that Lagos-Ibadan road practically every day today. That's a major road out of the commercial nerve center of Nigeria. At the same time, agriculture. In the area of agriculture, barely 5 years ago, this country was importing $5 million of rice every single day. Today, we're down to 90% less. We're producing 90% of the rice that we consume, and we're importing only 2% of what we used to import. At the same time, we are doing there are other forms of produce. Sorghum, for example, is fast replacing barley. We're also in cashew and practically every other area. Agriculture in Nigeria today has certainly gone up in leaps and bounds. I hope we'll have time to talk about that later on. We have a social investment policy, possibly the largest ever in the history of our country. 500 billion is what we're investing in every cycle. Under the Empower scheme, we're employing 500,000 graduates, and the 500,000 graduates are in every single local government. At the same time, we have the homegrown school feeding program. 9.2 million children are fed every single day in 26 states of Nigeria. We have what is called the Government Empowerment and Enterprise Scheme, which is a microcredit loan. We have market money, which is for small businesses, and then we have the trader money, which is for the petty trader. So far, we've done about 1.4 million petty traders and market people in all. At the same time, under that same SIP, we have the conditional cash transfer scheme, taking at least 400,000 people so far out of poverty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
As the turn of the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Peter Obi.
Mr. Vice President, fellow candidates, we now live in a country where we have the highest number of poor people in any nation, 87 million, and growing 6% every minute. Our country today has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world. Our HDI has dropped from 152 to 157. Our global competitive index has dropped from 124 to 127. In terrorism, we have moved from 7 to number 3, just behind Iran and Afghanistan. Our inequality have worsened. Our misery index have worsened. Our stress index, we are now 148 over 149. If you look at all this, it's hinged on 2 things from studies, and that is on education and unemployment. Our unemployment has moved from 24, as you know, to 40 today. The more you can invest in education, the better your economy. That shows we're not investing in education. In issue of unemployment, which has worsened, we have millions of our children out of school. And you can see from a study that there's a straight link between SMEs and growing your economy. And we're not supporting on SMEs very well. If you look at what China has been able to do with the SMEs, SME in China is contributing 60% of their GDP. And 60% of China's GDP is 7.2 trillion, which is 18% of Nigerian GDP. They are contributing 60% of the employment. On urban employment, they are contributing 80%. 80% of urban unemployment in China is 480. 80% of that is 380, which is twice Nigerian economy. China today, using the same SME, is guaranteeing 10 million jobs annually. This year alone, half of this year, China have produced 7.2 million jobs, which is over 40% of their target. Within the same period, Nigeria lost 44 million jobs. So we need to re-gig this and have a better focus on how we can create jobs. As long as we don't create jobs and have the number of unemployed youths in their productive age that we have today, we're going to have crisis. That's why we have issue of insecurity, issue of instability. All sorts of things we're witnessing today is because we have not been able to create jobs that other countries are creating with effortless ease. And I know that Atiku Abubakar Obi presidency can produce jobs, which is the most critical.
Thank you very much. Today. Thank you. Candidate of the Young Progressives Party, YPP, Umar Gesso.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Bon. Thank you, channels, and all the organizers of this wonderful and memorable event. My name is Umar Abdullahi Yeso from Kano State, daughter of a former senator in Kano State and a person that's grown and brought up into a political home. I have a passion for the girl child education, and I spent the early years of my adulthood in the development of a common Nigerian. I was the pioneer member, founder of Falala Women Multipurpose Cooperative Society in Bauchi, which has impacted the lives of a lot of rural women in Bauchi. And I later on founded Youth Enlightenment Initiative of Nigeria, which up to now we are empowering young men and women in the country. I later on joined the political system, which I co-founded New Progressive Movement, a party that intends to create a kind of avenue where the youth can just run what they have politically. And now, as a member, as a running mate of Professor Kingsley Magalu, I want to use this opportunity to thank the organizers of this event. And my presidential candidate is a person that has a lot to offer to Nigeria, because if you compare him with the choices we have, we can see that Professor Kingsley Magalu is among the best, because he has experience in all sectors of the economy, which is the main problem we are having today in Nigeria. And I, as Umageso, felt that I should join this race because I am a passionate Nigerian. I so much believe in Nigeria working again. And as a mother of three, as a wife, as a normal person, I've been to the lowest level of Nigerian standard of living. And I know how Nigerians are suffering. I know that there is no substantial thing from 1999 to date that a typical Nigerian will show today and say, yes, I am proud of my country. So to be candid, YPP is a party that is here to give a new thing. It's a party that's founded with a new ideology to bring in the paradigm shift, a bunch of kind of new set of politicians, new set of people, because we cannot deal with people that destroy our past to come and to expect them to come and improve our future tomorrow. So we are trying, we in our party, we have a lot of support from the youth, and because we all know that the youth are the future of tomorrow. So in my party, we so much believe in the new Nigeria, a Nigeria where every Nigerian will have an equal right and will have a story to tell tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of you. But we'll go on a very short break, and when we return, we will be meeting our candidates on their ambitions. Stay with us. Candidate of the ACPN. The office of the Vice President is often seen as that of a spare tire role to the office of the President. Do you think the office needs more responsibilities, or is okay as it is defined in the Constitution, the Nigerian 1999 Constitution as amended?
I have not seen the office of the Vice President as a spare tire, because it is the same constitution, it's the same qualification that the president of a country, of our country, must have, that the Vice President must have. And besides, roles were specified for both the president and the vice president. And don't forget, if the president is not around, it is the vice president that took over. And I want to tell you, to know how important the office of the president is, that it is not inferior to the presidency, is that if the vice president of our country takes any decision as acting president, the president of a country cannot legally go against that action. I remember when our president was away for some time, the president acted, and all decisions that were taken by him as acting president of this country were never controverted by the president. So the president, the first president of this country, is just like the office of the president. They have the same status, although one is higher, but none is inferior to the other.
Thank you very much. Candidate of the ANN, should you win this forthcoming election, you will be the first female vice president of Nigeria. How prepared are you for that role and the responsibilities that come with it?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Being a nation builder sticks from the heart. Somebody that builds a human being that starts from the human development. So having to take the position of a vice president is not something that should be taken lightly, because a nation builder is that person who sees a problem and resolves it. Our party is well known for what it stands for. We're not talking about, we're not the politicians of the usual days that promises this and that. So what we are going to do is to ensure that every policies that have been taken collectively as a party will be implemented effectively. We have shared values, we understand what the policies are, we understand what the issues are, which issues who goes to the root of humanity. That is what we stand for. We stand for humanity and community development. So being a vice president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is an office which must be taken seriously. It's an office which participates in all the cabinet meetings at office, which is about the economic development of, which handles the issues of economy. So what we are trying to do in our party is to ensure that the economy is diversified, the economy is vibrant enough to stop the too much dependency on a mono economy that we were used to ensure that every aspect of the 774 local governments that we have in Nigeria is upgraded to a commercial hub where every resource, every mineral resources would be enhanced and upgraded, where would ensure that the issue of unemployment and every other issue that affects the economy right now will be well taken care of. So it is not an office that should be taken for granted. And as I stand, because of my background in humanitarian services and issues, and as a mother, we're used to a country who put politics before economics. In our party, we are putting economics before politics because economics is the driving force. We're doing agriculture. We're talking about the diversification of agriculture, which this administration has already been doing. But what we'll do is much more than what this administration is doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Candidate of the APC, you have been vice president for the past 3.5 years, almost 3.5 years. How tasking has this role and responsibility been for you?
Thank you very much. First, I'm sure that those who know me quite well know that my hair was not this gray when I started out in 2015. So really, it has been tasking. It has been tasking, but it has also been an incredibly rewarding experience, especially from the point of view of the ability to do the things that one wanted to do all along as an individual. But the role is one where you are, in many senses, the chief advisor to the president of the country, and possibly the one person that will represent him, even just when he's absent for a meeting, as opposed to even when he's absent for a longer period. So there is a sense in which the role of the vice president is one that very closely mirrors the role of the president in very profound ways. But our vice presidency is different from the vice presidency of other countries because unlike other countries, even countries that have similar constitutions, our own constitution actually specifies roles for the vice president. So the vice president is the chairman of the National Economic Council. That is the council that's a council where all of the governors of the states meet every once in a month, and the vice president chairs that. That's a constitutional role. Aside from that, the vice president is also the chairman of the NCP. That's the National Council on Privatization. The vice president is also statutory chairman of about 22 different parastatals and agencies. And these are all defined by law. So in some senses, I mean, those who say, for example, that the vice presidential, or the role of the vice president is a spare tire, have it wrong because they probably are looking at other jurisdictions. In our jurisdiction, there are very specific roles that the vice president is entitled or is empowered by law to perform. But I think that one of the more interesting things about that role also is the fact that still a lot depends on the trust that exists between the president and the vice president, because the president does delegate several of his roles, and he can delegate those roles depending, of course, on how on the kind of trust that exists between both parties. So many times also that role is one where a good degree of trust is required between the two players, namely the president and the vice president. Where that trust exists, I think there is plenty of room for activity for the vice president. There's plenty that the vice president can do. And finally, I think that the role of the vice president, is one which also requires, I think a great deal of patience, because you may not always agree, you may not always agree with policy, you may not always agree with all the various aspects of what is being done. You may not always.
Thank you very much. But thank you. Time is up. Candidate of the PDP. Now, we have seen vice presidents fall out with their principals. Now, should this happen to you if you win the forthcoming election, how would you handle it?
Well, I assure you that that won't be the case. Because like it's clearly stated, the vice president have a role, and the role of the vice president, to me, is most critical role, because we're talking about the economy of this country. The main problem of this country today is its economy. Economy is on the knees. And because it's not working, it's not creating jobs, not doing anything, the vice president is in charge of rigging this economy and rebuilding it to where you can create jobs, to where you can be able to ensure that there's financing in various areas of our government. The vice president is in charge of, for example, debt management. Today we have virtually at a level where our debt is unsustainable because we are using over 50% of our revenues to service debt, which means we don't even have enough to be able to do infrastructural projects that is highly needed in this country. Today, your country is owing about $22.7 trillion, $80 billion. And we need to do more, and you can't even find the money to do it. So the vice president office is critical. That you're not today part of G20, you're not part of BRICS nation, even the Mint nation where you are, is because you have a poor economy. Because if you look at the BRICS nations, every other government there, Mexico has a GDP of over 1 trillion and per capita of over 8,000. Turkey that is there has a GDP of 800 billion and per capita of over 10,000. Indonesia has, and your own is low. So the vice president has a role to build the economy, to create jobs, to be able to make the country work. So it's a critical role. In falling out with the president, if you're doing the right thing, you can't fall out with anybody. I can assure you of that. If you continue to do the right thing, because the vice president who chose you for a reason. He knows that you have something to deliver. So you're not there. You're there to be loyal to him and serve Nigeria faithfully. So I don't see where there's a problem. I can tell you, I've never had any issue with anybody in government, and it won't start with this, because we will together start making Nigeria work again.
Thank you very much. Candidate of the Young Progressive Party, we run a presidential system of government which concentrates a lot of power in the office of the president. In a situation where you have a principal who hardly relinquishes power and authority, even when the Constitution mandates him or her to do so, how do you deal with such a situation?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Let me start from the platform we are on. In Young Progressive Party, I think there's no any other party in Nigeria that has given priority to women, because most of the offices we have, even in the national level, are always these are the woman is up and the man is deputizing, or the man is up and the woman is deputizing. Professor Kingsley Moghalu's presidency is about giving 50-50 opportunity to women to participate in his government in all levels of office, in all offices. So I don't think there's any presidential candidate who came up openly without any reservation to make this public. And I'm very, very sure him making this public he really meant business. And I don't think at this level he'll reverse it. That 50-50 gender equity is almost the priority in whatever we're doing in YPP and Moghalu's presidential candidacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me say at this point in time that the next round of questions, you have 2 minutes each to answer the questions, and you have 1 minute of rebuttal if you do have anything to contribute to that question. Now, let me begin with the YPP, this end. It is said that about half of the Nigerian population lives in extreme poverty, which invariably gives us a sad appellation of the poverty capital of the world. How would you reverse this situation if you are elected Vice President of Nigeria?
Well, this question is taking us back to job creation and economy. Economy is the backbone of each and every country, we all know that. And the economy of Nigeria, as we all know, it's not giving us what we are expecting. So economy alone can never be over-exaggerated, because an economy constitutes of the constitutional restructuring, healthcare, security, education, youth empowerment, employment opportunities, or job creation. Let's take the constitutional restructuring. As Professor Kingsley Moghalu has in his own plan to restructure Nigeria, but constitutional restructuring, because I know everybody today is busy talking about restructuring, but we are talking of the real constitutional restructuring, whereby the central will, as it distribute power down to the 6 geopolitical zones and give them opportunity to test run and to own the resources they produce and control them. This is a very, very major thing that will bring back our economy into life and create jobs. And the second thing is power. If at all today in Nigeria we are able to just decentralize the grid and distribute power and to make a grid in all the 6 geopolitical zones, there will be job creation. There will be enough power, or 24 uninterrupted power supply. And solving power issues alone can solve 70 or 80% of Nigerian problem, because power is what is holding us back today. If at all in South Africa they have only 75 million population and they are producing 50 something. Okay,
thank you very much. Candidate of the PDP. Now, closely related to that question is the fact that the aggregate investment in Nigeria in 2018 is put at about $60.8 billion, only 13.6% of our GDP. It has never gone above 16% in the last 10 years. Now, why have we failed so woefully? And what are you going to do differently as a government?
If you look at our economy, aggregate investment is not where I'm going to look about. Now look at the shallowness of the economy, starting from everything. If you look at, let me just use one thing, your capital market. Your capital market today is only $30 billion. It just lost $2 trillion anyway, about almost $8 billion in the past 1 year. But look at it, South Africa is $900 billion. The second economy in Africa. That shows the shallowness of your economy, because what you're doing is that you have a government that is trying to do what it's not supposed to do. The role of government is supervision and create the support and the guarantees that will enable private sector to drive the economy. So that investment needs to triple, because it's even low compared with your, that's why your size of your economy is very shallow. So for us, and that is why it's not creating jobs. That's why you have the level of unemployment you have today. So if you're talking about how to drive up the investment, if you look at everything that's been done, is that you need to look at the overall economy, regig it properly, where the private sector will drive the economy. There will be more investment. A lot will happen. Your banks today, all the loans they've given is about 15% of your GDP. When other countries are doing 50, 100%, China alone is doing 250% of their GDP as credits to businesses, to private sector. And you can see why you have better investment in other nations than Nigeria.
Thank you very much, candidate of the All Progressives Congress. Whereas in 2018, Nigeria had an aggregate investment of 60.8 billion. A country like China has an aggregate investment of $5 trillion, which is about 41% of its GDP. South Africa, here in Africa, has a $65 billion aggregate investment, which is about 18.56% of its GDP. But in the last 10 years, Nigeria has not risen beyond 16%. What is the problem and how can it be tackled?
I think the common denominator of the countries you've mentioned, both China and South Africa, is strong infrastructure. Our country, over the past 16 years, has suffered a major infrastructure deficit. So we don't have rail, we don't have roads, power. You know, when we came into office in 2015, power was at 4,000 megahertz. That is 16 years, in 16 years. So you need strong infrastructure. And nobody can make excuses about that. You've got to have strong infrastructure, which is one of the major focuses of our administration's policy, in putting in place the right infrastructure. The second thing is that you cannot have a thriving economy if you allow the type of grand corruption that has taken place in Nigeria in the past 16 years. I've heard one of the candidates say that fighting corruption is not an economic policy. With all due respect, if you don't have resources, if you don't have money, if the resources have been stolen, then you cannot possibly even generate jobs. You can't even build infrastructure. In the past 3 years, the government of President Muhammadu Buhari has spent 2.7 trillion on capital in Nigeria. That is the highest ever in the history of Nigeria, despite earning 60% less than the previous government. We have currently spent 2.7 trillion in 2 budget cycles, and we're earning 60% less. When oil was at $100 to $114 a barrel, no infrastructure was built. Today, oil is at sub-60. When we came into office, it was at $28, going on to $30. Yet, we spent more on capital and on infrastructure. The second thing is that you must have poverty if you don't have a social investment scheme. I've heard some mention already about countries like India, like Mexico, like Brazil. These are countries that had a social investment policy. And that's the sort of thing we have also.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Right, candidate of the Alliance for New Nigeria. Now, Nigeria's misery index is currently put at 51.26%, which is a combination of the sum of its unemployment and underemployment. Even when you use the old data and the current level of inflation. Now, what are you going to do to address this perennial and growing problem of misery and hopefully restore hope to the Nigerian common man?
Because of the policies we have with ANN, Alliance for New Nigeria, poverty has become like endemic in every aspect. And despite what is, with due respect, His Excellency Vice President Osibajo have said, for all the efforts that the government has put in, we are doing a complete overhaul. Most problems that we have is the fact that our over 774 local governments are not fully developed. What we are trying to do is we're going to do the devolution of power. We're going to do resource control. We're going to do revenue resource control and constitutional amendment, because those are the things that are structures that affects the endemic poverty that we have in Nigeria. Number one, in devolution of power, in the resource control policy that we have, we're looking at, like I mentioned earlier, that we're going to look at each resource that each local government has. Each local government will be given 20%. The 20% of the resource, the monies generated from each local government will be given to the people. 20% will be given to the local government. 20% will be given to the state government, and the 40% will be given. That way, more employment are generated, more monies are going around, more people. In China, most families, if you go to each family at the local government level, you'll find out that every person is producing something. The more vibrant the economy is, the better we are able to eradicate poverty. Another aspect that we're going to tackle is education, education is going to help to tackle most of the endemic poverty that we have in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, ACP and candidates. The value of the Naira has depreciated over time. In fact, at some stage, it dropped so sharply to $520 20 Naira to $1 before recovering, and now we have multiple exchange rates in the country, ranging from 305 Naira to 364 Naira per dollar. What policies or initiatives do you intend to pursue to bring the forex market into equilibrium and reduce this misalignment?
Thank you. We are in a global village. The world is now a global village. And the level of production going on in the country determines the strength or otherwise of the currency of the country. If much are not going on in the economy of that state, please forget it. Because as it is, Nigeria does not have the capacity to determine the rate at which the Naira is exchanged for other currencies of the world. To ensure a higher value for the Naira, we need to look inward. An economy that depends solely for everything to come into the country, for everything to be imported, it's not a serious economy. And until something is done to reverse the trend, what we do is just to look inward, to ensure that whatever we can produce locally, we don't import it. Whatever we can produce locally, we don't import it. Then we look at the economy to re-engineer it, to make sure that the economy works. For instance, in the petroleum sector, what we do currently is to import all our PMS needs. This will be reversed. We will make sure that even if we at the moment does not have the capacity to refine and sell out at least our government will do something to make sure that we add value to the product that you are selling out. That will create jobs. And in the regulation, what we do is to create the enabling environment and support the private sector to be able to drive the economy. As it is, the fall of the naira is low because foreign direct investments are not coming. And until something is done to make sure, to give confidence to the international system.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll be going on a very short break. And when we return, we'll be talking more about the economy. But please let it be noted that if you have a rebuttal, which you are entitled to, for any of the points raised by any of the candidates, please indicate and you'll be given the opportunity 1 minute to do so. But that's when we return from this break. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Before we went on that break, we were talking about the opportunity of the candidates to have an opportunity to do a rebuttal. And if you have any clarifications to make, please indicate and you will have 1 minute. The candidate of the PDP indicated, right, please go ahead.
Well, let me clarify again what I said. When I said fighting corruption is not an economic policy. It is not that you can't fight corruption, but you can fight it more aggressively while addressing economic issues. For example, in 2015, unemployment and underemployment was 24%. Today it's 40%. In 2015, we attracted $21 billion in foreign direct investment. We attracted only 17 last year. We attracted only 12 last year. That means it's going to, our GDP was 520 in 2015. Our per capita was 2,500. Today it's under 1,900. If you look at our stock market, it's lost over 2 trillion in 1 year. So that is not any policy. You're not creating jobs, you're not doing the right thing, and you're just fighting corruption. You can't shut down your shop and be chasing criminals.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, there are rules and guidelines to this debate. You are not allowed to cheer in the audience. You are not allowed to cheer, and you are not allowed to jeer at anyone. Please, let's stick by the rules. Otherwise, we may be forced to remove you from the hall. Please, let's be matured. Thank you. Candidate of the APC.
Thank you very much. Let me say also that if you allow criminals to steal all the inventory in the shop, there will be no shop. That's the problem.
Please.
And what has happened to Nigeria in the past 16 years is what the World Bank told us, that the major cause of our poverty is corruption. That's a major cause. That's what we've been told. So let me say that there is no way that we can minimize what has happened. We can't minimize corruption. If you minimize it, we run the risk of completely, in fact, the argument is lost. We cannot do what we want to do unless we're able to minimize corruption or eradicate it completely, which is what we're trying to do. I want to rebut the question about our debt figures. Frankly, I know that the candidate of PDP knows very well.
Unfortunately, sir, your time is up. Okay. And let me again say that each time you chair or jeer, you reduce the time of each candidate. And that time is very valuable, is very vital for him or her to make the necessary points. Please, let us reduce completely eliminate the chairing and jeering. Please. The next question is a common question for all the candidates. In 2016, when there was a major adjustment
in the price of petroleum products from 87 naira to 145 naira. Nigerians reluctantly accepted this price hike in the understanding that this was going to be the last and that the word petroleum subsidy will be banished from the Nigerian government's lexicon. Now we hear of subsidy again. What is any of you going to do differently to put this problem to bed? Candidate of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria. 2 minutes.
Subsidy, subsidy, subsidy. That has been the greatest appeal that the resources of this nation have been frittered away. What our government in power will do is to do away with subsidy. You do away with subsidy. Firstly, there are a lot of inefficiency in the system. The PMF, the petroleum importers, sometimes it's round-tripping. They do round-tripping. In addition to this, there is no effectiveness in it. And let me tell you, by continuing with subsidy, we are killing the economy of this country and we are killing the people. We are doing away, our government in power, by the grace of God, will do away with subsidy. What we do is to deregulate the sector. In a situation where you fix prices, you are indirectly telling people not to come, but nobody will bring a capital into a venture that is not profitable. If petroleum product, if our crude petroleum is deregulated, there are international investors and local investors that will come to this country to come and establish industry, thereby creating so much job for our people. SCPN government in power will deregulate the petroleum sector because subsidy is not even in the interest of the common man. Some of us will have as many as 20, 30 cars. What are the common people on the street? The poor peasant farmers, what are they benefiting from this? Some of them don't even have a bicycle. The subsidy regime only favors the rich. And any policy or program of government that does not favor the poor and the common man on the street, I think should be do away with it. We will do away with subsidy so that we can create jobs massively.
Thank you very much
for our people.
Thank you. Candidate of the ANN.
Good evening, sir. Subsidy in Nigeria is fraught with corruption. And if transparency is being applied to the excess money being gotten from the balance of the subsidy, is going to tackle a lot of problems that has fraught the nation. What we're big on in Alliance for New Nigeria is the fact that, number one, we'll attack the institutions to ensure that there's enough transparency, there's enough technological issues, technological GPS that is being upgraded to ensure that every kind of corruption is tackled. If subsidy is being eliminated, what we want to do in Alliance for when it comes to is to, number one, diversify the economy, which I've mentioned before. If we're able to diversify the economy and stop the dependency on oil products, we'll have little or no problem at all with subsidy. And once we are able to get the residue of the subsidy, we're using it to also do the four important things that we've always talked about. Talking about restructuring of our infrastructure. We're talking about ensuring that most of these excesses are being allocated to various structures like education, health, healthcare system, and all, talking about the complete overall of the civil service system. So subsidy is not something that it's something that will tackle properly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Candidate of the APC.
Thank you very much. I think the major problem with subsidies are just the abuses that can attend a subsidy. A subsidy is not inherently a bad thing. It's really the abuses. And I'll explain very quickly. Now, what happened under the old subsidy regime was that several independent marketing companies would simply come in and say, we delivered 5 cargoes of PMS, whereas they delivered nothing or delivered only 1. And so they made the subsidy in the difference. Today, it is the NNPC that's the sole importer of petroleum, so it is on the balance sheet of the NNPC that the subsidy is being taken. Now, let me say also that if today you were to remove subsidies, petrol prices could go up to as high as 220 naira per liter, could even go higher. Now, there is no country in the world, at least even the most developed countries, that don't run one kind of subsidy regime or the other. For the simple reason that sometimes you just need to take some of that effect, some of the cost effect away from your citizens. So, for example, America subsidizes agriculture, subsidizes production, subsidizes all sorts of things. Now, if you have a petrol subsidy, and I'm not saying that it must be there forever, but if you have the petrol subsidy, it helps. Because the moment you remove the subsidy, prices go up. We experienced it earlier on in the regime. Prices went up from 86 to 145 naira per liter. And then there was cost-push inflation. Transportation prices go up, food prices go up, even rents go up. Everything goes up. While consumer spending is weak, and while we're trying to develop the economy and develop the capacity of the people to spend money, I think that a subsidy, at least a minimal subsidy, is useful now. And that's why I think that the subsidy regime is one that we can tolerate, but obviously we must remove it as time goes on. But we can't remove it immediately. Otherwise, we'll suffer the consequence.
Thank you very much. Candidate of the PDP.
Well, what we are subsidizing today is inefficiency. If you get it right, the price will still come down. There's no way a country can have a budget of 340 billion naira for health, which translates to 5 naira a day for its citizens, and then pay 1 trillion for subsidy. There's no way you can have an education budget, which is the most critical component of your development, at 400 and something billion, and you're paying subsidy of 1 trillion. It is a waste. You need to reverse it, because you're not paying, they're not dealing with the engine that will drive your economy tomorrow. Everybody knows that even petroleum itself is a baggage economy. At the time people are developing a new economy, and then you're not paying attention to that. What are you actually subsidizing? Look at it. Nigeria has one of the low car ownership in the world. It's 10 per 1,000. So we have only 2 million vehicles, and you're paying almost 1 trillion when you have 87 million people that are poor. You can't do that. It's totally, you need to reverse it. And I can tell you, if you do the right things, the price will come down, because you're just paying for the delay in importation, the number of time cargoes stay in the port, and everything. We can't continue to pay for inefficiency in this country. I can tell that you can remove it, do the right things, the price of petroleum will come down.
Thank you very much. Candidate of the YPP.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Well, we've never been in government before, but the people that are presently and those that were have said a lot about the subsidy. I could remember during Jonathan when subsidy was removed, Nigeria was shut down. We were all out, which leads to a lot of things now. And along the line, during the early regime of President Muhammadu Buhari, still subsidy is removed. And Nigerians were so patient, thinking that we are going to achieve something. So I think you throw a question to us, but I don't think, as I'm standing here today, have much to contribute, but to throw it to Nigerians. There is subsidy removal and still subsidy removal, and nothing has been done. I still had them saying they are still paying subsidy, and the lives of Nigerians have not improved, and we've not seen anything substantial or something tangible on the ground. So to be candid, subsidy to a typical Nigerian is just a scam. That's how I will call it, the way President Buhari once said it in the newspaper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no rebuttal. Okay.
My rebuttal is simply this, that the question to ask the Nigerian is how much we're prepared to pay for petrol. That's the question. Because if you say to a Nigerian, remove subsidy or not remove subsidy, you hide the fundamental question. The fundamental question is, are you ready to take a 40 naira increase in petrol prices today? We say no. We say that the average Nigerian cannot tolerate that price increase. That's what subsidy is about. That's what it's about today.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, my rebuttal is still on the issue of subsidy. There are so many things that we can do with the removal, with the subsidy that will be removed from petrol. For instance, AGO, diesel, is now, it has been removed from the list of subsidy. Likewise, kerosene that are mostly being used by the poor. The markets of supply and demand will eventually regulate it if the subsidy is removed. And let me tell you, there are so many critical sectors that the subsidy regime can be deployed to. The agricultural sector is there. In farming, there are so many things we can do. Now there's crisis between farmers and cattle rearers. These people are not getting any attention from the government. Subsidy, that if it is removed, the whole sum of money that is being wasted on a daily basis can be used to deploy.
Thank you. Your time is up. Candidate of the ANN.
I was going to say almost the same kind of things that he said about the issue of demand and supply to affecting subsidy, because I know that once subsidy is removed, there are excess for the government, and all the monies that are derived from those excesses can be used accordingly. But my problem is, what is the government presently doing with the amount of money that has been the subsidy that has been removed, the remnants of the money, what is the government doing with it right now? Because it is not like what he said, it's not affecting the common man. We don't know what is going on. So that is my question.
All right, thank you very much. Let me come back to the candidate of the YPP. The gross domestic product, GDP, performance recovered slightly in the third quarter of this year to 1.81% from 1.5% in the second quarter. The target under the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, that's the ERGP, is 3%, but it has reached 1.81%. Now, this is interpreted as an evidence that we are still dealing with a very fragile growth of the economy. What needs to be done?
Thank you very much. No country will grow if its export is higher, if its import is higher than its export. The main thing I think Nigeria needs to do is to put emphasis on production. That's the industrial sector, which our presidency, by the grace of God, is going to bring in to this country. Because if at all we will invest in our youth, we intend to create a 1 trillion venture capital fund that we will inject into the youth and small-scale and large-scale industry in partnership with the private sector to see how we can impact the lives of a typical Nigerian, whereas every Nigerian can be an employer of labor, and this will definitely grow the economy and will lift the level of our GDP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate of the PDP. Now, the Nigerian economy as of today is still heavily dependent on the oil sector for its foreign exchange earnings and for other revenue. Now, what is or what will be your strategy for economic diversification? Because we have talked, government after government have talked about diversification of the economy. But each time we have seen not real effort at diversification. What will be your government's strategy?
You just said it, there's no real effort in doing that. You have to look at the components of your contribution of various sectors to your GDP. And if you look at it, one component needs to be tackled: manufacturing. No country that is doing well, if you look at the GDP of China, 40% is from manufacturing. Indonesia, 40%. Malaysia, 40%. Even in the Western world, yours is under 8%, and your factories are closing down. So you need to reverse that and you need to support your SMEs properly, not just saying I will support them, but to do it more efficiently. You can look at your loan portfolios. Today, the total loans by the banks is 19 trillion, and only 0.5%, about 5%, 0.5% of that goes to your SMEs. When in other countries, it's about 20%. So there's no way, if you can support the SMEs properly and be able to work on your manufacturing, which then leads that you must do something with your power. Because what you're generating today is too low. Look at your competitors. The lowest that you can see in the mint countries is Indonesia, that's generating 50,000 for 250 million people, and you're generating about 4,000 for 200 million.
Thank you very much. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, the candidate of the APC will be taking his turn. Stay with us.